Hi, everyone. Good evening. I want to talk tonight about seamlessness, as seems to be our way we're moving. And this morning, Jan was talking a little bit about working with a koan, what it is, how it can go. It can go only 100,000 ways, but there were a couple things that came to mind. One, I always think it's very interesting that how koans became a thing. There were a few ways they became a thing, but one of the big ways was that they not only noticed that you could have these awakening exchanges, and that, as Lin Ji says, enlightenment need not be something that takes time. That when you glimpse the greatness, the vastness, the emptiness of mind, it can change just that fast. And, you get this repeated line that I always think they could be a little bit more creative with in all the exchanges that say, and so had a great awakening. You think, could you, a few other adjectives, but you get the idea. It goes that way. But the other thing they noticed was that you could pass along an exchange, meaning whenever you're given one, you get to step inside. Somehow that person's awakening has a seamless quality. It becomes contagious. And so we get to taste the actuality of Lin Ji's awakening, or Zhao Zhou's awakening, or Yun Men's awakening, or that they're not separate from our own awakening. It's the same mind that we're stepping into. And we're really not even stepping into, that we're stopping blocking, that we're realizing. There's a great line that says, how do you enter? And the person says, just exclude non-entry. That's enough. And the other thing sort of in that domain is how I was thinking this morning, koans, part of what they do is show you how your mind is working already. And it's taking one up is a great way to notice how you orient to things. It will show you, like I have a student who he really fights with his koans, and he likes it. He argues with them. And he tried to bring this to me once as a statement of fact, that the koan was bullying him and sort of arguing with him. And I said, do you think it's the koan that's doing that, huh? Does this appear anywhere else in your life? And well, I do like to argue, part of being French. But that they show you if you think you need to get something or achieve something, or if something's on the line, or I don't know. I guess personally over time, I guess one of the big things they show you is that you're afraid to fail. This is a thing that you're afraid to be stupid. You're afraid, but good news, you get lots of practice until eventually it just becomes not about that. And one of the ways I've come to consider them over time is really like a friend who will tell you the truth about something. And it's kind of the other thing Jan was pointing to this morning. Anytime you get groups of humans, you have this problem of, can we tell each other the truth? And it's so much harder than you imagine it would be. And part of what I love about the koan tradition is that it's a dialogue. That's part of the idea. It's not up to you to discover it by yourself. you have friends and you have Sangha and you have the rest of the world, that if you're open, will tell you the truth. Whether or not you want to see it is often a different thing, but that's part of why we practice. And yeah, so what is this? We have this exchange that John offered us last night. Build a seamless tomb for me. And so as I say, I want to talk about being seamless. And in some way, if you've ever had a child or a dog, any kind of animal or a lover or anyone you love, anyone you don't love, if you've ever had something just lay itself on your chest for a little while, you know something about what it is to be seamless. And I was remembering this time I was working with this woman. I wasn't even that close with her, but she said, "You have to come see my grandbabies. They're twins." I said, "Okay." So I went over, and there was one baby who was clearly, the strong one of the bunch, who was 8 pounds and hardy and a good eater and, a good pooper and all the things babies are supposed to be. And then there was sort of the little runt baby who was having a hard time and not eating and not pooping and not doing the things that babies are supposed to do. And everyone was having a hard time knowing what to do with this baby. And for some reason, I just said, can I lay down and can you just lay her on my chest for a little while? I don't know why. Just felt compelled. And they said, sure. And I, in a way, as soon as she touched me, I could feel my seams start to open. You could just feel her little body and little spirit and feel us kind of meet. And she went right to sleep. We just laid there for a little while. And so much of meditation is that. You've probably noticed by now, if you haven't, we'll practice together. Particularly if you close your eyes, you lose track of your seams relatively quickly. You can even try it right now. You just close your eyes for a second. At first, you think, already you kind of lose the definition of whatever you think your body is. You just have this kind of nice, warm lump that you're vaguely related to. It's nice. If you try to define your borders, you really can't. And I've had times where I could swear my hands are about 30 feet large, or that my body becomes completely unrecognizable as a definitive unit. That's just in this vast experience. Let's see if you can get a taste. And that the sounds that are happening in your space, it's no longer clear exactly where they originate. Even your breath, who knows where it comes from and where it goes. And in this case, one of the questions they ask is, where will you start building this seamless monument? In fact, you start right here. As with most things in Zen, here is a good place to start. And they also ask, how big is this seam anyway? Can't tell. So there's the seamlessness that happens just by being here. Then there's all sorts of other kinds of seamlessness, like the seamlessness of moments. You were unhappy just a second ago, or you were delighted just a second ago. And where is it? Where did it go? I read this, a friend of mine sent me this somewhat silly book where the author, I think he's a neurosurgeon or something, has come up with all these versions of the afterlife, like what happens when you arrive there. And one of the versions is that you'd no longer live your life seamlessly. You live it in chunks based on activity. So you have, like, I don't know, 7 years having sex and 3 weeks clipping your toenails and, you know, 2 weeks frying an egg and 31 years sleeping. And, you go through this whole thing. And sounds terrible, actually. I think, 24 hours being in gut-wrenching pain, all this, and you see, the seamlessness actually is on our side, that everything is somehow full of everything else, that even when I feel full of despair and think it can't get any more piercing, but I start telling my friend about it, I'm at the very same time filled with love for my friend. And suddenly I can't tell the difference. Am I happy that my friend is listening and that I have a friend who would be willing to love me, even though clearly I'm just pathetic at this moment? Or am I pathetic and a terrible it's seamless. I can't tell the difference. I'm just having to take the ride. And part of where this gets interesting, this seamless tomb, I suppose, is it what they call mind in Zen is itself a seamless tomb. Remember when I first came across this koan, there was something deeply reassuring about the fact that in the totality of existence, nothing leaves ever. You're just here with everything forever, all ever, ever. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And John last night mentioned Wenang, who's this famous sixth ancestor, was the teacher of this national teacher from our koan. And he gave a very famous, what's called the Jewel Platform Sutra. And he has a few things in there about the nature of mind, which is pretty much everything. That seamless tomb. Remember a guy once asking me at a gathering, "You're a Zen teacher, can you please give me a meditation on the nature of mind?" And I just opened my arm to the gathering and said, the nature of mind, meditate. He just looked at me very confused. But because he was looking for something else, he was looking for something grand. And in fact, it is something grand, but not what you think. But Wenang, he talks about the Mahaprajna Paramita, which maybe tomorrow we'll do the Great Prajna Paramita Heart Sutra, which is Zen. But he says Maha means great. The capacity of the mind is so great, it's like space. But if you practice empty mind Zen, meaning you think it's just about getting rid of your thoughts, you will fall into a featureless void, The idea is not to get rid of everything in this seamless tomb. In this world of ours, space has room for the sun and the moon and the stars, the earth and its mountains and rivers, every plant and tree, bad people and good people, bad teachings and good teachings, heavens and hells. All this exists in space. The emptiness of our own nature is also like this. The absolute entirety of the universe, the seamless tomb, is right here, no further than this. He says, our nature contains the 10,000 dharmas. That's how great it is. The 10,000 dharmas are our nature. To see humans and non-humans, good and bad, good dharmas and bad dharmas, without rejecting them and without being corrupted by them. This is to be like space. This is what we mean by great. And the paramita, so much of what he talks about, the Mahaprajna Paramita, is the wisdom to reach the other shore. And what he means like that is the seamlessness between birth and death, between good and bad, between that everything is somehow welcome and allowed, and there's room inside of us for everything. And this notion of without rejecting them and without being corrupted by them, I think is one that's very interesting. Because what Wenang says later in this sutra is that actually anything that comes into our consciousness is not a problem. Absolutely anything. The trouble comes when we fixate on it. That like the ocean, it can't just flow through, which is freedom. We somehow think, oh God, I can't be having that thought, or I don't want that. Or corruption, I think, is even more interesting than rejection, which basically means it starts to worm its way into your psyche. Do you think you should have had a better answer for that koan? Was that a stupid thing to say? Should I not have missed that period? Should I? You begin to be corrupted by these things that are flowing through, and suddenly had a very interesting exchange with my neighbor this week, who every so often just goes stark raving mad. I think he watches a lot of news, which, as many people said to me today, can be rough on the psyche. This is not a surprise. And every so often, he'll send a missive email to no one in particular. Everyone's BCC'd. That just says something like, "This must stop," and that's all it says. He doesn't sign it. He doesn't, or we should be ashamed of ourselves. This is him being corrupted. And so the other day, not quite sure what happened, actually, he starts asking whether we're going to sell our house. And I wrote to him and I said, how, what's going on? How come you're asking if we're going to sell our house? He said, well, you've just treated my driveway so badly that I figured because you're such terrible people, you were just going to sell it and leave it for the next person. And this has nothing to do with anything, in case you were wondering. I mean, it's and then he wrote back before I could even respond and said, don't respond, I'm done talking. And so I just said, okay. Then the next day I got another email that said, please disregard my email yesterday. Happy New Year. And he put a little sign that said, one of those little, that said, love your neighbor. And why I bring this up to you. Um, in some way, there are waves happening, right? There's pain happening. There's confusion happening. There's discord happening there. But if I fixate on it, if I suddenly decide whose fault it is and what needs to happen and everything that's wrong, and I'm a good person and these are bad people, and whatever form that takes, I've been corrupted in some way. And you can see for somebody like him, there's such intense attachment to, I am a good, loving person on the right side of things, that he's got to have an enemy. But instead of really looking into his own mind and heart to see, why am I so full of rage? Or why am I so full of fear? Or am I lonely? It becomes it becomes weaponized in some way. It doesn't just flow through. And in some way, Zen has sort of two things it's up to. One is realizing the seamlessness. That if I look at anybody here, if I look inside your window, if you look inside somebody's window, give it a try. Just look in to someone for a moment. How in some way it's hard to know when you feel whatever you feel, what's them and what's you. You just have the experience, the living, breathing wave that comes through. And then the other side of Zen is trying to have finer and finer and finer discernment to say, well, what is it? What is it that's here? Is it sorrow? Is it smugness? Is it just a tiny veneer of defense? How thick is it? How that's all part of getting to know the nature of reality, is how specific can we be. And you can tell with both these things, there's a reason this is a practice that goes on your whole lifetime. Because it's always changing on you. And something that you might find you love to look at or is difficult to look at can also change on you. And it's interesting. I was just thinking today about one time during a retreat, there was a difficulty that happened. There was a squabble and involved several people, but I was sort of felt like I was at the epicenter of it. And I could feel justification, and I could feel defensiveness, and I could feel protectiveness, and I could feel all these sorts of things, right? And I really didn't know what to do. I felt really trapped and stuck. And in some way, I felt very alone in it. And because, no one can understand my position. They only knew. But I kind of could tell I was not of right mind. I was trapped. It's always good to know if you can manage it. And so I decided to just go sit for as long as it took. I sat through as many periods. I didn't see people. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything. I just sat. And I let the entire universe of difficulty appear in my psyche. I made room for it. All the fighting, all the playing out of what was going to happen depending on which decision I made, all the, kalpas of grievances, all the, fear of um, consequence, all just it was rough, it was intense, but I somehow knew this was the place to be. And there came a moment completely out of nowhere where it just lifted. And what was very interesting from our seamless monument perspective was I could look around the Zendo and I could see all the people involved and I could feel it's different. Something moved. And you say, well, did it move here? Did it move in somebody else? How did it move? How did it change? How can I manufacture this again? Um, but it just lifted as things do. And by the time I ran into the people, everything had moved. And I guess that's another way of seamlessness, how things are always communicating together. And we know our tiny piece at any given time. But that's really all we can tend to. And the more honest and clear we can be about our piece at any given time, the more open we can be to that part. With so much not knowing sometimes, things will gradually reveal themselves. I was reading this story recently where this guy was supposed to give a speech. And he just thought something's wrong with this speech, but it wasn't getting canceled and he didn't know how to get out of it. And, this went on. He's having dreams he shouldn't give it. And he thinks, oh, no, the people are hard to work with. And this goes on. And so he travels, he's going to give the speech. And just as he's getting to his hotel, this old Cherokee woman comes down from wherever she lived up the mountain. And he says, hi, can I help you? And she says, oh, yes. A bear came to wake me up last night and told me I need to give a speech tomorrow. My voice is needed. Can you tell me where I need to go? And he said, yes, actually I can. Can we come in here and talk? I'll tell you about the speech. And she said, I haven't been down the mountain for a long time, but the bear was very insistent. And, you don't usually get an actual bear, but I think you do get a lot of things. You do get a lot of things that somehow tell you when it's time and tell you what. And I think the real art of building the seamless monument is not rushing it. If nothing's come yet, or if it's not clear, or if all you have right now is that you're lost, or you're jittery, or you're whatever you are, that's what you have. And if you can stay with it, it will move. It will begin to clarify itself. And I tell you, there's the father of the national teacher had an exchange with this same guy not too a ways before. And it's getting at this in a slightly different way, but I really like it. I want to share it with you. The emperor's father asks, who controls the 10 aspects of the Buddha body? Who controls this whole situation? And surely if we knew, maybe we could do something about it. The national teacher says, patron, you're standing on the head of the infinite Buddha body. And this guy's pretty much as clueless as his son and says, I don't understand. It's, and he says, you don't recognize your own pure, everlasting body. That's this, right? You don't recognize that this, any part of it, any part of it is it. And it's very easy in times like we're in to think I need to be doing more. This is something I heard so much today. This is, I think, what's plaguing my neighbor, right? I need to be doing more. We need to stop what's going on. You're standing on the head of the infinite Buddha body. That caring for anything at all, caring for what needs attention in your life, is caring for the whole body. And that, like my situation in retreat, we don't know where the origin is or where the solution is. We just somehow know, I don't know, I can love my kitchen. I can love my pots and pans and my pantry. I can love a little baby that needs a place to rest. I can love the snow that's piling up. I can somehow care for what's connected to my own pure everlasting body. And the seamlessness has to take care of the rest. And I'll share with you just a teeny tiny snippet of a poem I happened upon. Another element without seams. The river is what this is called. People walk out of themselves into the river. That's what you're doing when you're coming here. People walk out of themselves into the river. The surface is a sound you can't hear. Fish pop up, weightless as thoughts, then plop back as if they forgot. Women walk out of their lives into the river. Gray rocks appear and disappear farther offshore. They spume in the dark current like a lost school of illusions. People walk right out of themselves into the wide river to hold what cannot be held for long. They kneel down into reflected clouds or splash luminescence on their bodies until they are new. They turn and they shine. Whether you're walking out of yourself or into yourself, it's a good night to be here. Thank you for being with me.